Hi, my name is Bob Dougherty, Regional Safety Manager, Ward Trucking. Today we're going to do a full pre-trip video. So when beginning our pre-trip inspection, it's important to mention that the first thing you're looking at is the general conditions, the general overview of the unit. After mentioning that, you want to look to see if there's any leaks or leans. Once we've called that out, we're going to start at the top. We're going to look at our air deflector, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not been broken, cracked, or damaged. Our clearance lights, there's 5. They're all properly mounted, secured. They're all working properly, and they're all the proper color, which is amber. Our windshield is properly mounted, secured, not been broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no cracks in our windshield. There's no illegal stickers on our windshield. Our windshield seal is properly mounted, secured. There's no abrasion bumps or cuts in the rubber. There's no signs of any dry rot in our windshield seal. Our inspection stickers are clean, clear, present, and up to date. There's no other illegal stickers on our windshield. Our windshield wipers are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's a proper tension to the windshield, ensuring that our windshield wipers work properly, and that the rubber blades on our windshield wipers are good, they're not dry rotted, there's no cracks on our rubber blades. You want to make sure of that. Brings us down to our hood on our tractor, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our grille is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our bumper is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Now, as you go through this, every piece you can touch and call out, let them know that that's what you're calling out, so they know what you're talking about. As I go along in this video, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be touching every piece I can to inform you as to what we're talking about. Our spot mirror brackets are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our spot mirror is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our spot mirror is not broken or cracked, it's clean, clear, and visible. Our hood latch is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It works properly. After calling out the front of the vehicle, we're going to now open the hood and check the engine compartment. Okay, so once we open the hood, we're going to look at the general condition of the engine compartment. Just a real quick overview to see if anything stands out that may be wrong. Once we look at that, we're going to go to our air filter. Our air filter is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no missing clips on our air filter. Our windshield washer reservoir is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no signs of any leaks coming from our washer reservoir. Our washer reservoir is filled. It has a proper amount of liquid in there, so it would operate properly. Our fill cap is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and our safety chain is attached. Our turbo is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no missing hardware on our turbo. Our fan blades are properly mounted, secured, as well as our fan, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our fan shroud is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our radiator reservoir is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. If you look, our radiator reservoir is at the proper operating level. There is a max line and a minimum line. If it's below the minimum line, at that point you would add the radiator fluid, the antifreeze that you need. In front of our fan, we have our radiator, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no signs of any leaking coming from our radiator. The bottom of our radiator, we have our radiator hose, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no signs of any leaking coming from our radiator hose. Our bottom radiator hose runs up into our water pump. Our water pump is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It is important to know that our water pump is belt driven. Our belt has no more than 3/4 of an inch of play on it. There's also no excessive wear on our belt. Tucked in behind our frame here, right behind the water pump, is we have our oil filters. Our oil filters are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no signs of any leaking coming from our oil filters. We have our fuel filter, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's also no signs of any fuel coming or spilling from our fuel filter. Our frame is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no illegal drill holes or illegal welds on our frame. So that's this side of the engine compartment. We're going to go to the other side of the engine compartment and we will call out the suspension and brakes on the other side. So now that we're on the driver's side of the engine compartment, we're going to start with our wire harness. Our wire harness is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no exposed wires in our harness. Behind it we have our air harness, our airline harness, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. I'm looking to see if there's any frayed air hoses, and I'm also listening to see if there's any audible leaks. There are no audible leaks coming out of our airline. Moving forward, we have our power steering reservoir. Our power steering reservoir is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's a hose coming out of our reservoir. It goes down to our power steering pump, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Coming out of the bottom of our power steering pump, we have our other power steering line comes to our gearbox, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no frays in our hose. There's also no leaking in our hose. We have our top radiator hose, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no signs of any leaks coming from our top radiator hose. We have our alternator, which is properly mounted, secured. It is belt driven, which is important to know. Our belt, once again, has no more than 3/4 of an inch of play. There's also no excessive wear on our belt. That's important to state. Our frame is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no illegal drill holes or no illegal welds on our frame. In the back, which is kind of hard to see, we have our air compressor. Our air compressor is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's attached to the frame. Our air compressor is gear driven. It's important to know that the air compressor on this truck is gear driven. We have our steer column, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no more than 10 degrees of play on our steer column. It's connected with universal joints, which are both properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. They're also properly lubricated. Our gearbox, or steer box, is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no missing hardware. It is attached to our frame with nuts and bolts, all tight, none are missing. Our pitman arm is properly mounted, secured. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's attached to our drag link with castle nuts and cotter pins. Our drag link is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's attached to our control arm. Once again, it's attached with castle nuts and cotter pin. Our control arm is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. I'm going to call out our suspension, which is our leaf springs. They are not broken, they are not cracked, they are not scissoring. Our leaf spring hangers or leaf spring mounts, there's one in the front, one in the rear, properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our front axle is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. The axle and the leaf springs are connected with 2 U-bolts and 4 nuts, which are all properly mounted, secured. There's no missing hardware. Behind our axle, we have our tie rod, which is properly mounted, secured. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's connected to the control arms on each side of the steer tires. We have our brake line, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Goes into our brake chamber, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's connected to the hardware on the front. There's no missing nuts or bolts on our brake chamber. Our push rod is connected to our slack adjuster. It's connected with a clevis pin and cotter pin. Our slack adjuster is properly mounted, secured. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. To check your slack adjuster, you would release the brakes, pull back on the push rod. There should be no more than 1 inch of free play. If you have more than 1 inch of free play, you need to adjust your brakes. We have the outside of our tire. There's no abrasion, bumps, or cuts. Our tire is properly seated to our outside rim. Our outside rim is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our valve stem is metal. It's important to know and call out that it's metal. Metal stem and metal cap. Our hub seal is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. This hub seal is clear. I'm able to see that there is oil up to the fill line on my hub seal. My lug nuts are all properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's important when checking your lug nuts, you check each nut to make sure that it is secure. Signs of looseness would be rust streaks or any metal shiny parts, shaving, showing that there are loose lug nuts, which there are no signs of that for us right now. It's also important to know that each tire should have at least 100 PSI in the tires. Coming to the side of our tractor, we have our mirror bracket, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We have our mirrors, properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. They are clean, clear, and visible. There's no cracks on our mirrors. We have our door latch, which is working properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our door hinges are properly mounted, secured. Our door hinges are not loose, not bent. Our weather seal, our weather stripping, properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no missing sections out of our weather seal. There's also no dry rot on our weather seal. While we have the door open, we can check our 10 BC fire extinguisher. Make sure it's properly mounted, it's secured, the latch works, it is properly charged. We'll put our fire extinguisher back after we checked it. Close the door. Make sure it works properly, which it does. We have our window crank, which works properly. Our window rolls up and down. Our window is not cracked or broken. Our door latch, our inner door latch works properly. Inner grab handle and outer grab handle are both properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We have our IFTA sticker, which is clean, clear, present, and up to date. Our steps are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Now, we also have our battery box here, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We'll take our battery box off. We're going to check the conditions of our batteries. We're going to make sure that they're properly mounted. They're not loose, they're not bouncing around inside there. Check our terminals. Make sure that there's no corrosion on our terminals. We want to check our wiring, make sure that there's no exposed wires that would cause arcing. If you have positive, negative wires exposed, crossing each other, that is not good. So once you open these up, you want to make sure that they're all secure. Make sure your terminals are clean, no corrosion. Make sure you don't have any arcing of your inner battery wires. So once we place the battery cover back on our batteries, we're going to check our air tanks. Make sure our air tanks are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Make sure that there's no leaking of the air tanks, okay? And we've already checked those steps. They're properly mounted, secured. Our DEF tank is properly mounted, secured. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. You want to check to make sure that your DEF cap has a safety chain secured. It does. That the O-ring inside is properly mounted, secured to stop any leaks that may occur from the fuel. We have our fuel steps are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our fuel tank is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our fuel tank straps are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. And our fuel tank gaskets, these black rubber pieces here, are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's important to have the gaskets to prevent any metal on metal contact, which would cause corrosion, which would not be a good thing on your fuel tank. Our fuel tank cap is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our safety chain is attached, keeping the fuel cap attached to the fuel tank. On the inside, our rubber grommet is properly mounted, secured, it's seated. There's no signs of any dry rot on our rubber grommet. It's working properly. Once again, that's to stop any type of leaking from our fuel once the cap is tightened. We have our quarter panel, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. That's going to bring us to the rear of the tractor. Starting from our side fairing, it's properly mounted, secured, it's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We have our grab handle, which is properly mounted, secured, it's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our air deflector mounts are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our DOT reflective tape is properly mounted, secured, it's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our rear cab window is properly mounted, secured, it's not cracked, it's not broken, it's clean and visible. Our rear cab window seal is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no signs of any dry rot or any crack indicating the seal is in bad condition. The rear of our body of the cab is in good condition. There's no cracks, there's no holes in the body of our cab. Our work light is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our stowaway for our air lines and our electrical cords is properly mounted, secured, it's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our air lines themselves are properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our electrical line is properly mounted, secured. Take our air lines off, checking the rubber grommets on both of them, making sure that there's no cracks or no dry rot going on with our rubber seals. On both lines, both grommets are good. Having bad grommets would cause a bad connection to your trailer when you hook up, which we'll be doing later. So that's the end of the back of the cab. We're going to now call out the transmission and drive shaft. So we have our transmission, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our U-joints, which are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. And then our drive shaft, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. The drive shaft runs underneath the body of our catwalk and connects to our differential. We have our drive shaft running to our front differential, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our torsion bar, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our other drive shaft, properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, leading to our rear differential, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. And our torsion bar, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. So before we connect to the trailer, we're going to call out the fifth wheel while we can still see it. This is our fifth wheel. Our fifth wheel is properly greased. This is our fifth wheel mounting plate, which is connected to our frame with the proper hardware. We have nuts and bolts connecting the fifth wheel to the frame. So our pivot pin for the fifth wheel, properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Cotter pin holding the pivot pin in place. This is our release handle for the locking jaw, which is in the open position right now because we are not connected to the trailer. So we're going to inspect the rear of the tractor, the brake lines. There's two axles on the rear of this tractor. We're going to inspect the rear tractor. It's the best view the camera gets. So we have our brake lines, which are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We're checking our brake lines for any chafing, also for any audible air leaks. Our brake chamber is properly mounted, secured. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Also listening to see if we can hear any audible air leaks coming from the brake chamber. Coming out of the brake chamber, we have our push rod, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It goes to our slack adjuster, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our push rod and slack adjuster are connected with a clevis pin and cotter pin. To check the brake adjuster, the slack adjuster, you would release the brakes. You should have no more than 1 inch of free play on your slack adjuster when the brakes are released. If there's more than 1 inch of free play, you would need to have your brakes adjusted at that point. After that, we're going to check our inner walls and our suspension on the outside of the frame. So after inspecting the slack adjuster, you're going to come to the inside of your tire and check your brake shoe. Make sure your brake shoe has no more than 1/4 inch of material. Also, your brake drum is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. You want to make sure that there's no contaminants, oil, or anything on your brake shoe or brake drum. You have your rear spring, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's connected to the rear axle with 2 U-bolts and 4 nuts. There's no missing hardware. We have our brake, or our shock absorber and shock mount, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We have our airbag, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our top airbag mount and our bottom airbag mount are both properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. You also want to listen to hear any type of audible air leaks coming from your airbags, and also ABC. It is rubber, so any abrasion, bumps, or cuts on the airbag is stuff we're going to be looking for. Coming over to our tires, we're going to check our inner tire, make sure there's no abrasion, bumps, or cuts. Our tire tread depth on the rear tires, on the drives, it's 230 seconds. Now our steer tires are 430 seconds, but our drive tires and trailer tires are all 230 seconds, so you want to make sure you have more than 230 seconds of tread depth, which we have. Also want to check for even wear on both tires. These tires can be recaps. They do not have to be virgin tires like our steer tires are. Also, you want to check for your bud spacing. You want to make sure that there's no foreign objects stuck in between the bud spacing of your tires. Checking both the inner and outer rims of the bud spacing here, the tires, the sidewalls. Make sure there's no abrasion, bumps, or cuts in between here on your bud spacing. So coming to the outside of our tire here, we're going to make sure that our outer wall has no abrasion, bumps, or cuts, that it's properly seated to the tire. Our outer rim is properly mounted, secured, is not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. That our hub is properly mounted, secured, is not cracked, broken, or damaged. There's no leaking oil coming from our hub. We want to make sure that our valve stem is metal valve stem, metal cap, that's important, not broken, cracked, or damaged. And that all of our lug nuts are properly mounted, secured, touching all of them, making sure none are loose, checking for rust streaks or any types of metal shavings or any signs of new metal on your threads indicating any type of looseness. Now we called out this rear axle. Like I said earlier, there's two rear axles on this trailer. You would check this axle the same way we've checked this axle out. So coming to the rear, we're going to check our mud flap, make sure that our mud flap doesn't have any holes in it. We also want to make sure that our mud flap is no more than 6 inches from the ground, that our DOT tape, reflective tape, is across the top of our mud flap all the way across 100%, and that our mud flap is connected with a cotter pin, making sure that it doesn't go anywhere. Our tail plate for our brake lights and turn signals are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. And our reverse light is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. All right, once we've connected, the most important thing to check is to make sure that your locking jaw is in a locked position and it's around the shank of the kingpin. You also want to make sure that your fifth wheel and your skid plate, that there's no space between them. Any type of space would indicate a bad connection. Our locking handle is in a locked position, which also indicates that the locking jaw is across the shank and in the locked position. This is the most important thing to visualize once you connect the tractor to the trailer. So once we've checked the connection between our skid plate and our fifth wheel, ensuring that there's no space between them and that our locking jaw is across the shank of the kingpin, we're going to come to the front. We're going to check to make sure that our trailer blade hands and grommets are in good condition, that they're not frayed, there's not any dry rot. We're going to connect them. That our electrical pins, 7 holes, there's no obstruction in any of the holes. And that we have 7 pins and they're all in good condition. Connect our electrical line, and we'll do the final part with our red air line, making sure that the trailer grommet is in good condition, it's not cracked. We will connect that, seating it properly. Check the front of our trailer, make sure that there's no holes, there's no missing rivets in the front of our trailer, and all of our placards are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and there's no missing clips on our placards. Going to the top of the trailer, we want to check to make sure that our clearance light is properly mounted, secured, it's working properly, and it is the proper color amber. We have our registration for the trailer holder is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and our inspection sticker for the trailer is properly mounted, secured, it's clean, clear, visible, and it is up to date. The side of our trailer, properly mounted, secured, there's no holes in the side of our trailer, there's no missing rivets in the side of our trailer. Our bottom rail is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, there's no missing rivets. And we have DOT tape going 50% down the side of our trailer. Okay, so now we're going to check our landing gear. We're going to check our landing gear frame, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no missing hardware. Check our landing gear handle. Make sure that it does go in high and low gear. Make sure that it operates properly, sending our landing gear up and down. Our landing gear shoes are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. All right, so coming down to our placard plate, we will make sure that it's properly mounted, secured, it's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, that our placards are all properly mounted, secured. There's no missing clips on any of our placards, and our rear turn signal indicator or side marker is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and it's the proper color amber. Okay, so as we go down and inspect our trailer, we want to look underneath at each section. We want to make sure that our cross members are properly mounted, secured. They're not bent, they're not broken, they're not damaged, as well as the floor. And we want to make sure that there's no holes in our floor, there's no missing pieces to our floor, which is in good condition. Our air lines are properly mounted, secured, held up by springs, and we want to make sure that they're at least 18 inches from the ground. You don't want them hanging any lower than 18 inches. And that brings us to our trailer tandem. So our rear tandem, this is our rear tandem release handle, which is in the lock position. We have 4 pins, 2 on either side, which are both in the lock position on this side. Properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Our rear tandem axle, both of them, have the same parts as we do on the front. You have your brake lines, your brake chambers, slack adjusters, your brake pads, your brake drums, all which are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It's just hard to get the camera in on the trailer to show you the view of that. You want to check your tire depth back here, as well as your bud spacing. You want to make sure there's no foreign debris or obstructions in your bud spacing. Your tire depth on the back here has to be no more than 2/32. So you make sure that your tread depth is wearing evenly, that there's no abrasion cuts on any of your tire walls, and that all your tires are seated properly to your rims, and that the tire PSI is more than at least 100 PSI. You also want to inspect all your lug nuts on these tires and make sure that all the tires are at least 100 PSI. That's basically it for the rear. The only difference is there's air tanks on the trailer, which supplies the air to your brake chambers on your trailer. So that's the only real difference back here other than the front. So when you watch the video, when we call out the brakes on the rear drive tires, that would be the same as calling out the brakes and airlines on this trailer tire. All right, so when we get to the rear of the trailer, we're going to check to make sure that our rear marking light is working. It's the proper color. Our ABS light is not on, but our ABS light is located right here. After checking that, we're going to come to the top and the rear of our trailer. Make sure our marking lights are working. There's 5. They're all properly mounted, secured. They're all working properly, and they are the proper color red. At the top of the trailer, we're going to make sure we have our DOT reflective tape, which is there. It's clean, it's clear, it's visible. We have our door cables, our roll-up door cables, which are properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We have our DOT reflective tape going across 100% the bottom of our door. We have our door latch, which works properly. Our door goes up and down, works properly. We're going to check the inside of our trailer, making sure that there's no holes in the ceiling, holes in the walls, or holes in the floor. This trailer is in good condition. Latch our trailer, make sure that our handle is secured. Our pull-down tape is secured, which it is. At that point, we're going to check our marking light, our turn signal, and brake light. Our brake light is working, it's proper color red. Our turn signal is red, it could also be amber, it's working properly. Our ICC bumper is properly mounted, secured, it's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and it has DOT tape going across 100% of the bottom of the ICC bumper. Our grab handle is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and that will conclude the rear of our trailer. So we would not call out the brakes and the tires on this side, we would inspect them the same way we inspected everything on the driver's side. The only exception being is the muffler. The muffler we have not inspected yet. And when you inspect the muffler, you want to make sure that the stack is properly mounted and secured, that the connections are properly mounted and secured. And when you're looking at the connections, you want to make sure that there's no black soot. If you see any black soot on your exhaust, that means there's a leak, which is not good. You want to check your shield, your heat shield, make sure it's properly mounted and secured. Inside the shield is our actual muffler, which is properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. We have our connections in our pipe running down into the engine, which is properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Once again, looking for any black soot around the connections or any black soot in the pipe, which would indicate the pipe has a hole. And then finally, we have our muffler bracket, which is properly mounted, secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and there's no missing hardware. That will complete our inspection for the outside. We're now going to go in the inside and do our in-cab inspection and brake check. Okay, so when we get into the inside part of the in-cab inspection, we're going to make sure first that our seatbelt is not frayed and that it latches properly and that our latch is secured, ensuring that we have a proper hold on our seatbelt. Once we have that, I'm going to once again check and make sure that my windshield is properly secure, that there's no cracks in my windshield from the inside. Make sure that my mirrors are properly adjusted to me, in which they are. After that, I'm going to go and do my document check. I will pull out, make sure that I have my registration, my insurance card, as well as my hazmat registration forms, and my spotted land and fly certificate, which is all in this envelope here. After checking that, I'm going to make sure that I have my logbook, spare logbook, in case my ELD goes down. I have a spare logbook to use. Also making sure that we have our 2020 ERG book and our red hazardous pocketbook available. Our emergency triangles, 3 of them, are in the box, and the box secured to the ground. Our post-accident drug kit is in the tractor, and then behind the seat is our spill kit. In case there's any type of spill, we have our spill kit available. So once I've checked all that, I'm going to turn the ignition on so that everything operates. The engine is not on. Once I have that on, I'm going to check my city horn. I'm going to check my air horn. I'm also going to make sure that my defroster works properly, which it does. I'm also going to check at this point, make sure my wipers work and my washer fluid works. Okay, once all that is done, I'm going to start the engine. Once I start the engine, it's a safe start. I should have mentioned that it's a safe start. The safe start is making sure that the tractor is in neutral and my foot is on the clutch when we start. Releasing that, I'm going to check. The first thing that should come up is my oil pressure, come up automatically. Not automatically, but it should be the first thing that comes up because it's the pressure. I will check all my other gauges to make sure they're working properly. Most of them are temperature gauges, my trans temperature, my coolant temperature. They will take time to rise as the truck heats up. My air tank, both my air tank primary and secondary are building up. They're both at about 110 psi and climbing as the air compressor is kicking air into the tanks. I'm going to build the air up completely to 120 psi. I'm going to wait for the governor to kick in. Once the governor kicks in, I'm going to begin my brake check. So I'm going to aid in a little bit of stuff here to let the governor kick in. While I'm waiting for that to kick in, I'm going to hit my right turn signal. Make sure that my right turn signal indicator is working. It is working properly. My left turn signal indicator is working properly. And that my high beam indicator is working, and it is working properly. My tachometer is working. It's up to about 6,100 RPMs right now. My speedometer, we won't know that until we do our rolling brake check. So when we do our rolling brake check, that should come up to about 5 miles per hour, and at that point, we'll see if the speedometer is working. So in the course of just talking to you, I heard that the governor kicked in. There's no more air being supplied We're at 120 PSI right now. So to do a proper brake check, you can go out and chock the wheels. What we're going to do is we're going to depress the clutch, put the truck into the lowest gear, which is first gear, and then we're going to turn the truck off. Let the truck turn off, come off the clutch. Now we are in first gear. The next thing you do is you turn the ignition on without starting the truck so the electronics work. We're going to release the brakes. The truck will not roll anywhere because we are in first gear. The air is going to settle. Once the air settles, we're going to do our static brake check. Our static brake check means that we should lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure within 1 minute. So our brakes have settled at about 110 PSI. We will check for a minute and make sure we lose no more than 3 PSI in 1 minute. Now, for time purposes, we're going to say that the minute has expired. We're going to now do our applied brake check, which we're going to put our foot on the brake pedal, hold it down. There's going to be an initial release of air. That has happened. We have settled at just over 100 PSI. For the applied brake check, we should lose no more than 4 PSI in 1 minute. Once again, for time reasons, we'll say that the minute has expired and we did not lose more than 4 PSI. Now we're going to do the alarm and buzzer check. So our alarms, light alarms on our meters should come on, as well as our buzzer. I'm going to do that by pumping down the brakes. These lights and alarms should come on between 60 and 40 PSI. Okay, so our lights and alarm came on, 60 PSI. Now we're going to continue to pump the brakes down, and our brake knob should pop out between 40 and 20 PSI. So I will continue to pump. Okay, so both of our brake knobs have popped out, indicating that the emergency brakes are working properly. We're going to now start the truck back up again. We're going to do a safe start. Safe start is putting our foot on the clutch, making sure the truck is in neutral, and turning the ignition on. Now we can assist by accelerating a little bit to bring the air pressure up. The governor should turn off at 120 PSI. You should hear the governor kick in, and the air compressor will stop working at that point. Now that we've sat here for a while and the truck has been running a little bit, I can tell that my coolant temperature has come up a little bit more since we've been in here, as well as my transmission temperature. And my PSI's indicators are both climbing. My DEF gauge is working, as well as my fuel gauge, which I didn't mention earlier. It's okay to call things out later if you miss them your initial go around. So it's always good to have a pattern sweeping from left to right, from inside to out. However it is, do it the same way every time. So we've climbed above 60 PSI. That's why our lights and our alarms have gone off. And we are climbing. So the next thing we're going to do is our brake checks. And once we do our brake checks to make sure everything holds. Alright, so we are at 100 PSI now and still climbing. We do not need it to be at a full 120 PSI in order to do these tests. So I'm going to continue at this point. So the first thing we're going to check is going to make sure that our tractor brakes hold. So we're going to push in the trailer brakes. And then we're going to put the truck into first gear, and we're going to make sure that the tractor brakes hold. So the tractor brakes are holding. Put the truck back in neutral, come off the clutch, and we're going to switch it. We're going to apply the trailer brakes, push in the tractor brakes. Now we're going to make sure that the trailer brakes hold. Okay, put the clutch down, first gear, go slow, come off the clutch slowly, and the tractor brakes are holding well. Go back into neutral, come off the clutch. We're going to push both brakes in, And now we're going to check the trolley brakes. So we'll depress the trolley brake, pull, and the trolley brake is holding. Now we're going to do our rolling brake check. We're going to roll at about 5 miles an hour. Speedometer came up, press the brakes, and all the brakes are rolling. That's our rolling brake check. So our air brake and rolling brake check works fine. It's important you do it in that order. Everything, checking your windows, your mirrors, and your gauges. Doesn't matter in which order you do it, but the brake part is important. You have to do it in that order, and explain what you're going to do before you do it, so that the instructor knows and that you do it in the same pattern every time when you're doing it. Just as a point of reference, it's always good to have a system that works best for you. So I'd like to thank you for watching the video. I hope it's of aid, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.